I was really trying to get the audience. You can't try to get the audience or try to get a response with your, message. Even with salespeople, I tell them, if you're trying to get that person to call you back, that's not what you need to be doing.
Right.
Because they're not going to call you back. They can smell the desperation.
They smell the fear. Tune into today's episode of The Claw as I speak with Jackie Chism. She is the lead fisherwoman at Liger Partners. We're going to talk about the 6 creepy copywriting mistakes that companies make that get in the way of their content really doing what they want it to do. Tune in and find out if your company is making the same mistakes. Welcome to The Claw, the marketing podcast for C-suite executives. I'm Eric Holtzclaw, Chief Strategist at Liger Partners, and I'm joined today by Jackie Chism. She is our lead fisherwoman, and I'll let you tell everybody
what I do. I basically use words, whether it's copywriting or content writing, to throw out the bait and lead your target audience right to you.
Oh, nice. Mm-hmm. So Jackie lives in my favorite part of what we do at Liger. I love words. It's just love them.
Yes,
I love a well-formed sentence. And very hard to do.
And the smaller the sentence, the harder it is.
Yes. Yeah, it's like is it Mark Twain says that it's very difficult to write an easy sentence or something like that. Mm-hmm. He says it better than that. But anyway, so we're going to talk today about the 6 spooky copywriting errors that people make.
6 creepy copywriting errors.
6
we love that alliteration. Got to get that in there.
Okay, nice. So let's get into number 1. So what's number 1?
Number 1 is not doing your research. So it's often said that copywriting is 80% research and 20% writing, and that is so true. So you really want to know your benefit. So the reason that people are going to most benefit, or the way people most benefit from your product and your target audience, they usually have some kind of problem, that might lead them to benefit from your product. So you want to know what that is. And you want to know, what their fears are, their desires. You want to also, besides your audience, really know that product and what are all the best features you want to highlight. Sometimes one of those small features could become a benefit. You never know. And so doing the research is what usually brings that out. When you know something inside and out, you're going to find those things and be able to hit on them when you're talking to your target audience.
And so you walk into a lot of content areas that are new or deep. What are some of your tips for getting there?
For getting the research. So obviously, the internet is a great tool. You can find anything online. And so I will research.
The internet?
The internet.
What
of course,
an amazing
everything
thing.
On the internet is
Just
true,
Google it.
Right?
Right, okay.
So yeah, I first start out by Googling
GTS,
it.
you know what that means, right? Yeah.
Yep. So I just start out by looking up the competitors, seeing what they're doing, seeing how they talk about similar products. I look up my company on the internet. I look up what other people are saying about them or their product on the internet. Okay. So right now, Yelp is great. You can see all those reviews on there. Google My Business. You can see everything right there in Google. So what people are saying is really important, because then you'll know the flaws of your product or some of the things that you want to make sure that you focus or write about in a different way. Sometimes embracing your truth and embracing those flaws is part of it, but if you don't know them, you can't do that. And so I will go through and see anything that I can find on the internet. I also love talking to people. So I will go out there, find people in my target audience, and I'll just ask them questions. And I never know what I hit on when I'm talking to people. Of course, COVID has made that harder for all of us,
right, yeah,
who love to talk with people and just sit in a Starbucks or sit, at a coffee shop and oh, that person looks like they're in my target audience.
I just want to randomly talk to you about this. Yeah.
Yes, or family members, you can give them a call and be like, hey, what do you think? Pick their brain if they're in that target audience. And then also learn as much as I can about the product. So that's going to involve talking to the people who work at the company, whether I'm promoting a company or a product in general. I want to go and learn everything I can about it. So going to the workplace, is often essential. If I can't do that and they're in another place, then it might be talking to different people who work there. Whatever I can do to really immerse myself in their culture and what they do and learn kind of all the ins and outs, as much as I can gather, even if it seems pointless, is what I do. Sometimes I can't gather as much as I would like, and then, I'm limited to that, but I gather as much as I can.
Okay, so my first way to avoid a creepy copywriting mistake is to do my research.
Yes.
And writers, I think we're all naturally curious.
Oh, yes.
Now it's just like, oh, wow.
We just like being students of the world.
Yeah. Okay, nice. Okay, so what's number 2?
Number 2 is not understanding or knowing your audience, which hopefully should come from your research. You want to research them too. But if you don't understand or know anything about them, how can you talk to them? Mm-hmm. So I want to understand their desires and fears. I want to understand the problems that they're having and the issues where my product might be able to fulfill that. I also want to know where they're at. Our audience just went through a pandemic. So, a lot of people, if you saw in advertising, they shifted the way they were doing things, understanding that people were dealing with that. They were dealing with unemployment as well. And so they really did change their advertising to speak to where people were at. But companies that didn't do that at all might be seen as a little bit tone deaf.
Right.
And so it's really important to know where your audience is at too and what they're dealing with as a whole in general. And then I would say, once you do your research on your audience and you really get to know them, sometimes if it's an audience you're familiar with, you might think you know them more than you do. Yeah. So sometimes you want to do that research and get to know them even if you think you already know them, because you might come up with something else. And so it's my problem sometimes is if it's an audience I really know, it's not assuming things,
Right.
really figuring out or getting the data to kind of affirm what I think I know.
Yeah, so empathizing with them, empathizing with the audience. When you're not the audience, are there any tips or tricks around that? Like if I'm not the audience I'm writing to, should I even be doing the writing, or should it be somewhere else? Does that question make sense?
Yes, of course. I mean, obviously the audiences that you know best, you're going to write to the best. Or you could assume that, but you can get to know anybody or any audience or any person and figure out, it's just like connecting to another human being or person. Not all of our friends are the same as us, right? And sometimes our favorite friends are the people who are different, because they're everything we're not, so it's just a matter of getting to know them. They challenge us. So I think those audiences might be more challenging, but you might find them more interesting and therefore have fun or enjoy writing to them more than you would somebody who's just like you. I find it hard not to assume things about the audiences that I know best, and trying to make sure that I let the data inform what I'm writing instead of what I think I know.
Yeah. So it might be easier, honestly, to do it for someone that's not as close, because you're not going to make those assumptions. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Interesting. All right. Number 3.
So one of the things that I find often in websites is that people don't seem to understand their unique selling proposition. I find it's actually the biggest homepage copy mistake that I see. When I go to someone's website and I'm looking down their homepage and I scroll through the whole thing and then I have no idea still what makes them unique or different from their competition. Like, why should I buy from you or, develop a partnership with you over your competitor, over somebody else? And so really, I feel like businesses need to sit down and think about what's their unique selling proposition, because that's what you want to make sure that your audience knows about you whenever they're in that decision-making part of their process. And so you want to make sure that they know why you're unique, what makes you different, what's better about you compared to your competitor. That USP, let me see. I actually have some notes here because I'm like, I know I'm going to forget to say something important about USP.
Well, USP is like one of the hardest things.
Yeah, it's not just what makes you better. It's why should I buy from you? And it answers that question, but it's also, it gives someone in your target audience that purpose, that reason above somebody else. And so I just feel like that's it's essentially it's part of your brand. That's the word I was looking for. It's part of your brand. So your brand is definitely, it helps set you apart from somebody else, and that's part of your unique selling proposition is always going to be a part of that. And so really to help people understand your brand too, that's got to be, front and center or in any communication you use when you're talking about your company.
And so on the unique selling proposition, because I want to unpack that one a little bit, I agree with you how important that is and what that, where that fits. It feels like one of the more difficult things for a company or even an individual to do for themselves.
Sometimes it is because they have it's hard for you to look at yourself from the outside, right? You need others to kind of sometimes tell you, hey, well, this is what's great about you. And it's hard sometimes to see or tell or say what's great about us, like we're often our own worst critics, right?
Or you get like caught up in all the things, it's like
yes.
You see everything and you don't see like the clear thing.
Yes, yeah. The very clear, yeah. So it's, if you can get that group of people that know you really, really well to get around you in a room one day and just tell you what they think is great or it makes you different, that often helps, definitely, because if you can't see it yourself, the people who know you best or know what you do best are going to definitely help you narrow in on it. They may not be able to verbalize it perfectly or help you figure out what you need to say about it on your website, but they're going to be able to help point it out to you.
Yeah, the three that you kind of shared at the beginning, doing the research and knowing your audience, I could see companies from a marketing perspective potentially doing that okay, right? Like successfully. The unique selling proposition and really what makes them stand out. I mean, it takes a sophisticated brand, a sophisticated company to have thought through that. And when I'm in those sessions with clients, you have to really push hard, right? To like get them to, that's not interesting. Everybody says that, right?
Yes.
I get in trouble, right? Because I'm in the room going.
We're really relatable and personable with people. I'm like, That's it. That's a lot of businesses say that, right?
Yeah.
And they'll tell you that's what's unique. We're really welcoming. We're really approachable. And I'm going, yeah, so is half the businesses out there. Yeah. So let's get down to really what makes you unique. Sometimes it's even how they started or, the reason they started their business. And when you get back to that, you really start going, oh, there it is.
Yeah. That's such an important part. Like you go back to the core of where the business originated, like why it came to be, because that was the pain point or the thing that was being solved. And then it starts to manifest itself into what it does. And people want to talk about what they do, right? Because that's really, I feel like it's a fun part of the discovery process we do with clients, but it can also become some of the contentious because you care like, but tell me more. Oh, I'm so bored, And then they use like, I can't think of the word right now because we're under pressure, but there's a couple words that they use that you're like, you cannot use that word. Right? You just can't say that. Everybody says that. Like just don't even put it in your vocabulary anymore. So, okay.
Even the word unique, I used it once already. That's one of my words that I try to stay away from, know? And so, but I used it because it does have to do with the unique selling proposition.
Right.
But like people will say, well, we offer unique things. I'm like, no. Don't stay away from that word. No.
Yeah, and I don't think it's progressive, but there's like a word like that people say all the time. And during the commercial break, I'll think about it. That you're like
helpful. That's another one.
Well, I don't like help. You know that. Jackie and I have a personal conversation about help. So, but we have clients who like that's all. When you first start working with them, every single thing they're just a helpful brand. You're just very helpful, right? Everything you do is help. We help. That's the most I've said help in a very long time. All right. So we're going to go to our first commercial break. And when we come back, we'll talk about the 3 spooky, is that it?
Creepy.
I want it to be spooky. Creepy copyright mistake errors people make. So you're listening to The Claw. I am Eric Holtzclaw, Chief Strategist with Liger Partners. I'm talking today with Jackie Chism. She is our lead fisherwoman. And you're listening to the marketing podcast for C-suite executives.
Thanks so much for watching the Claw podcast. We'll be back after this short break.
When I first met the Unicorn Marketing Agency, everything was rainbows and, well, unicorns. They promised overnight marketing results for my business, leads my sales team couldn't keep up with. Once I signed up with them, they didn't even hold up any of their promises, even after months. And the only thing they gave me were excuses. After a while, communication with them became spotty and they were hard to get a hold of. Eventually, they stopped responding altogether. Overall, I lost a total of about $23,000 over a 4-month period. And I lost a lot of valuable time and energy.
And we're back. You're listening to The Claw, the marketing podcast for C-suite executives. I am Eric Holtzclaw, Chief Strategist at Liger Partners. I'm talking today with a fellow Liger, Jackie Chism. She's wearing her Roar, I'm a Liger shirt. Yes. And we're talking today about creepy copywriting mistakes. And we talked about 3 in the last session, and we're going to talk about another 3. So in the first 3, we were, you need to make sure you do your research. You need to know your audience. And you need to know what makes you and your company unique. And special. What makes you special? Mm-hmm. Why are you special? Just had church lady all in my head. So there you go.
That's special.
So what's number 4?
Number 4 is not telling your story.
What?
Yeah. A lot of people just don't do that. I don't know why.
They don't tell their story?
They don't tell their story.
Okay, well, tell me more about how to tell my story.
Yeah, so a lot of people think that in order to be professional, they've got to give this, professional history on their website or say we do this or we do that, and we have to maintain a professional status by,
That's the second roboto we've done today.
And they forget that businesses are, people buy from other people. They don't, they do business with other people, not other businesses. So they forget to be human sometimes and include that human element of their story. People want to know about your business. They do business with people they like.
Right.
And in order to like you, they want to know your story, not just your business's story. Sometimes that involves you as the owner or, the person in charge. What's your story? Because they're going to be dealing with you. What's the story of some of your key staff members? And so telling the story of the business is extremely important. And so when I start digging into, what people's content looks like, whether it's on social or their blogs or, papers they're putting out to download, their website, and I'm looking at it and I'm going, I don't see a story of a business anywhere here.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're about. I don't know what they love. I don't know, what they're struggling with now. I don't know, how they started and what just gave them this inspiration to start this business. People want to, they want things that are memorable and they want to be a part of something. And so give them a chance to be a part of the something that you created or the business that you're doing. And whenever they buy from you or whenever they do business with you, they will feel like they're a part of that. And so just not going into your story at all or doing that personal part is a big mistake.
Yeah. Yeah, and and it's something that people shy away from because we must have been taught in school, not to talk about yourself, or it's just not professional, or I don't know, because it is a thing that we have to work really hard to. Number one, we often have to work hard to get let us show the people, like showcase the people. And then you're like, hey, well, so tell me, you want me to tell you the story about me starting this in my basement and how da-da-da-da? And it's
That's interesting, though.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the thing I'm going to remember. I'm not going to remember that I almost named a company. I'm not going to remember that you do this thing, right? Because everyone else does that, and that's kind of boring.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it helps to set you apart also, and that story may have to do with your unique selling proposition. So things are connected. And so I love hearing about people and their stories. It's why I got into being a storyteller. And so that's one thing I know I definitely look for when I go to people's, pages or their social media accounts.
What's funny about that is my wife, April, loves history. She's a big history buff. And I tell her I don't like history, but I like people with history. Like, I love to talk to somebody who's just been through something and, that kind of thing. Because history, George Washington stood here. Well, whatever. But the only reason we know George Washington stood there is because we've heard his story, right? But people with stories, everyone has some interesting thing you wouldn't expect.
Yes. Oh, yes. We like to hear from the, World War II veteran who was there, or, the person who went on that march with Dr. Martin Luther King. But we don't, we've had the history in school. We don't necessarily love like seeing some documentary that goes over all the basics. Again, we want to hear from the people who were there. We want to know their story. We want to know what they felt, And so that's what
That's probably explains to me why I get so bored on like the history. When we go look at the plaque, you're like 1902,
because you don't connect with it.
Yeah, I'm like,
right?
I'm never going to remember it. But if you were like, if that person was standing there and telling you that, you're like, oh, that's amazing. I met this guy and this happened. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Much easier to connect with and relate to because it's another person.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. Number 5.
Number 5, trying too hard.
Tell me more.
I know I just said that you should do 80% research and do as much as possible,
Yeah.
but oftentimes when I miss the boat writing, it's because I was trying too hard. I was trying to pack too much into one piece.
Yeah.
I was really trying to get the audience. You can't try to get the audience or try to get a response with your, message. Even with salespeople, I tell them, if you're trying to get that person to call you back, that's not what you need to be doing.
Right.
Because they're not going to call you back. They can smell the desperation.
They smell the fear,
Yes.
right?
Yes. And so what you want to do is just try to have a relationship with a person, right? And if you're just trying to connect with people, connect with your audience, you're just trying to get to know them, trying to share with them, help them out, even though I just said help, help them out.
I'll forgive it, even though you just said twice, but there you go.
With your material, that is going to add something to their life. You're going to add value. Those are the things that are going to connect with people. And if you're trying too hard, a lot of times it doesn't happen. And so you're more successful with those. I'm just going to connect. I'm just going to toss something out there. I'm not going to put too much into this or try too hard and try to make it happen.
Yeah. That kind of almost informality to it even. Mm-hmm. And simplifying. When I wrote for Inc. for a long time, and I would be yelled at by my editor because I would send something over and it was too dense. And she's like, "This is 2 articles. Stop it." She's like, you got to split it in half, and you can use the other sometime else, but you got too much in here. You're just trying to tell me too much. I'm like, fine, and I often feel that I'm being, it's been insignificant. Like I haven't taught you anything, but the person I'm talking to didn't know anything at all. And so by teaching them just even a little bit and getting them to walk away with one key point, you've made a huge difference, a huge impact. So, okay.
Exactly.
Yeah, I could see that. And if you've done all this research too, you come back, you're like, I've got all these things to say.
Exactly.
But look at it as a well to go back to versus you don't want to spill it all. tell everything
in one
once.
sitting. Yeah.
In one sitting. Yeah. All right. Leave something for later.
Yes.
Yeah.
You don't want to just like barf on your audience with writing.
Right. Okay. So number 6.
Number 6, watch your typos and your grammar mistakes.
Okay. And be distracting.
What people don't understand is that can be a lot more distracting than they realize. It could actually cost you customers. And so if you are not a good proofreader, which I'm a great proofreader of other people's work, but not of my own. Right. So I know what it's supposed to say. And when you're writing, it's kind of like it psychs your mind out. So I love other people to read my stuff. And when I'm reading other people's stuff, I always say, hey, if you want somebody to look it over before you send it out, let me know, because it's always good to have another pair of eyes looking stuff over. They're going to catch stuff that you don't, you know? And when you are, your audience isn't going to just, cancel you because you made one typo, right? But if they're repeatedly seeing you say things that are grammatically incorrect and put lots of typos there, eventually they're going to be like, this person isn't credible. Right. And I don't know if I can trust them. Mm-hmm. And
didn't they pay attention to the squiggly line?
Yeah.
Right. Have you heard of Grammarly?
Yes, have you heard of Grammarly? I know we have so many tools nowadays, so why not use them? They're at our fingertips. So we've got, if you wonder, if you should make this a capital, I could just look it up on Google. Just Google it. It's going to pop up on Grammarly or Grammar Girl or one of those few websites that you have. And In fact, a lot of people are really good about putting out even infographics now on social media to help people with grammar. I saw one the other day. It's because the holidays are approaching, and it was if you are writing out your Christmas cards, like here are the common mistakes we see on Christmas cards, and it was awesome.
Yeah.
That's great because people will use that going into the holidays. This is how you pluralize your family name, right?
Yes.
In the proper way. And so those things are
Or
always...
so like several Christmases ago, you're like, how would you spell that?
Yes. Now I have Google and I don't have to wonder anymore.
Right.
But I had one stat here I was going to share that people spend 8% less time on a website if they see a grammar mistake, and that there was an 85% higher bounce rate on pages that had grammar mistakes.
Wow.
So
Is that something that the Googles look at too? Does Google look at like grammar and misspelling? Do you know? As part of this, like crawling the page? I wonder.
for SEO,
Yeah.
that's possible. I have not seen that in the latest algorithm articles I've read, but that is possible too.
Interesting. Yeah.
I know that it does see things as less relevant, so it could affect your score. That's possible when they see lots of grammar mistakes because, of course, the bots put out things.
Right.
And so Google is always scanning to try and get out the bots and get to the more relevant content. So it's definitely possible.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, and when I wrote a book in like 2013, and in that process, my favorite part of the process was the editing process. I enjoyed that the most. And other people, that's actually what I decided. People who say that they hated writing their book hated the editing process.
Oh, it's grueling when you write a book. Yes.
Yes, and I loved it. It was just like, I would get the stuff back and I was like, that's amazing, because they would come back and say, this sentence is confusing or whatever. And it would be. And so there would be an opportunity to go back and clean it and to kind of think through it again, or I need you to tell me more here or whatever. Now, there was one last phase and I was writing stuff that had some jargon in it. There's like a copywriting, there's the phase of like, thick content, and then they go through like spelling and stuff. And that person drove me crazy because they kept changing things they shouldn't have changed, because there's like, no, that's what you call that, right? That's not wrong. So, but the editing, like anyone I've ever met who said, I hated writing the book, it's because I hated the editing. They're like, they kept picking at stuff. I'm like, no, they were just
That's just their job.
making you better, because there was a simpler way to say it. All right, so it's time for a test. So there are 6 things that you shared today about creepy content writing mistakes.
Creepy copywriting mistakes.
Copywriting mistakes, yes. Creepy copywriting mistakes. So the first one is to make sure that I've done my research. Yes. Number 1 is I've done my research. Number 2 is, this is whether or not you're going to see if I'm like losing it, right? Because I have to remember the 6. 2 is to know my audience. So number 2 is knowing my audience. I don't think number 3 is what I think it is, because tell your story is number 4, right?
Yep. People that don't tell their story.
Don't tell their story. What was number 3?
It's an acronym, or not an acronym, it's initials.
Unique value proposition. So 1 is to do my research. 2 is to know my audience. 3 is my unique value proposition. Number 4 is to tell my story. Number 5 is not to like share everything.
Not trying too hard.
Yeah, don't try too hard. Just getting progress in the way of, perfection in the way of progress. Realize that your audience doesn't know as much as you do. So anything you tell them is going to be interesting and different and new for them. And then finally, don't make those silly mistakes, because it takes away from all that hard work you did in 1 through 5.
Yep.
All right. Well, and so that's how you fish for people. Yes.
Part of it. Yes.
That's why you're the lead
These
fisherwoman.
are some
at Liger.
basics.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I love talking about my favorite topic, which is words.
Thanks for having me.
Words. So you've been listening to The Claw. I'm Eric Holtzclaw, Chief Strategist at Liger Partners. The Claw is the marketing podcast for C-suite executives. I said it wrong. And I've been talking today with Jackie Chism. She is the lead fisherwoman at Liger Partners. And until next time, thanks for tuning in.
Thank you so much for tuning in to the Claw podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe, rate and review this podcast. And if you or someone you know wants to make an appearance on this show, email us at yourbestie@ligerpartners.com.